Number 1. Stevie Danielle Bates. Stevie Bates, aged 19, was last seen in Manhattan, New York on April 28, 2012. It is rare for me to profile cases that are this recent. Most of my cases are from the early 1990s or earlier. The reason for this is that most of the recent cases have plenty of publicity and investigation going on, unless you've had the misfortune of going missing from New York City. As seen in my articles about the disappearances of Tyus Jackson, Sylvia Lwowski, and poor Lois Darnapic, NYPD said they didn't have the resources to even be the contact agency for tips. There is a pattern here. Stevie was a student at Hunter College in 2011. For a school assignment, she began attending the Occupy Wall Street protests and became personally caught up in it, eventually becoming part of the tent city that was erected by protesters. Occupy Wall Street was raided and taken down in November 2011. Although Stevie did not have a known drug problem, her boyfriend, Brandon Klosterman, was a user, and Stevie had several friends who were drug users, many of whom she'd gotten to know through Occupy Wall Street. In early 2012, Stevie accompanied some of the friends she'd made at Occupy Wall Street on a cross-country road trip. She reportedly had just broken up with Brandon at this time. The car they were traveling in broke down, and Stevie had lost her cell phone. She decided to take a bus back home instead of continuing on the trip. She called her mother from a borrowed cell phone on April 27, 2012. She was at a bus station in Pennsylvania on her last layover before getting onto a bus to New York City. She told her mother that she was going to stop to pick up her belongings at Brandon's place in Brooklyn. Once she arrived, then she would be headed to her parents' home in Yonkers. Surveillance footage on April 28, 2012, shows the last known sighting of Stevie. She can be seen at 110 coming up the escalator, appearing unsure which direction to go in. Then she is seen walking out of camera range. Stevie never came home and never contacted her family again. In the hours and days following Stevie's disappearance, her mother had a great deal of difficulty getting any law enforcement agency to take a report. Each agency would refer her elsewhere. She eventually filed the report in Yonkers, which is not particularly near where Stevie was last seen. The amount of time it took for someone to finally take the report, and the fact that it was not ultimately taken in the place Stevie was last seen, undoubtedly hurt the chances of finding her quickly. Opportunities to examine other surveillance footage were missed, and public transportation drivers that may have taken her from Manhattan to Brooklyn were not questioned. Brandon is said to have lived as a squatter in a vacant building in Brooklyn at the time of Stevie's disappearance. Although there are no details of his living arrangements, Stevie herself posted this on Facebook, and I am assuming she is referring to Brandon's place. If I am correct, then there are likely several people who know whether or not Stevie ever made it to Brooklyn the day to pick up her belongings. When questioned, Brandon said he hadn't seen her since before she'd left on her road trip. He then deleted all his Facebook communications with Stevie and disappeared himself for a time. He turned up in Ohio when he was arrested on an unrelated charge. His roommates were probably still there in the days and weeks following her disappearance. Were they ever asked if they had seen her? Were the belongings she had gone there to retrieve still there? What about the bag that she appears to be carrying at the bus station? Did it somehow get there? I honestly don't know if these people were ever questioned or the place searched. My guess is no, as they were too busy giving Stevie's mother the runaround to actually go look. But still, somebody, lots of people, had to have seen Stevie. The other people who got off the same bus she did. Maybe she chatted with some of them during the bus ride. Maybe they walked out of the bus station at the same time she did and saw her get into a cab. She most likely stopped somewhere in New York to eat something. Once Stevie was reported missing and flyers were distributed, one person did remember Stevie, although he'd seen her prior to her disappearance. He not only remembered her, but he had happened to capture her on video, riding on the train. This footage was believed to have been filmed on April 11. It is not known for sure if the man sitting next to her is Brandon. I hope Stevie will be found soon. She is severely missed by her family and friends. If you remember seeing Stevie after April 27, or recall anything unusual, possibly near the area of E26th and Cortelyou in Brooklyn, please contact Yonkers Police or Stevie's family through their Facebook page. That is the only Brooklyn location listed on the flyer's places to search list, so I'm guessing Brandon was living near there. Number 2. Dorothea Jean Richardson. Dorothea Jean Richardson, age 21, went missing from Abilene, Texas on June 30, 1981. There isn't much information available on her case, and I've been able to find very little to add. I don't see any media coverage, and as of this posting, DNA is not submitted. I could not find any information on her biological family, other than that her maiden name is Howard. I think it's possible that she doesn't have any surviving family members. I can't see any evidence that anyone is looking for her, and the fact that DNA is not on file makes me wonder if she has any living family. All that is known is that she left the house on foot following an argument with her husband. She apparently had a car, but it was inoperable, and it was left behind. She had married her husband in 1979, and he is now a registered sex offender and transient in Florida. I am not naming him here because he has not been named a suspect as far as I can see, and his current status doesn't necessarily mean anything. Her marriage record isn't difficult to find though. Sometimes in situations like this, I wonder if perhaps the person isn't actually missing. Maybe her husband reported her missing, and she did leave him and went back to her family, thus explaining why nobody seems to be looking for her. It's unlikely after all this time, but it has happened. There was a case several years ago of a college student who went missing. She'd left her apartment in Hawaii abruptly, leaving her belongings behind. It turned out that her landlord had reported her missing, but her family knew where she was all along. The missing person did not know she had been reported missing until she Googled her name. Elizabeth Bishop went missing from Abilene, Texas about 3 months after Dorothea's disappearance. Henry Lee Lucas was suspected in Elizabeth's disappearance, though he denied involvement. I don't know that he was ever questioned about Dorothea. I wish there were more to say about Dorothea's case. I hope she is okay. Dorothea's case. Number 3. Sharon Sarah McCauley. Sharon McCauley, age 25, was last seen in Austin, Texas, on December 11, 1984. The last verified sighting of her was around lunchtime, when she had met her husband for lunch. After leaving her lunch date, she was seen driving eastbound on Howard Lane toward Interstate 35. She was driving a white Volkswagen Bug with an orange hood. There were bits and pieces of information that surfaced that could have somewhat tracked her movements in the time after she left her lunch date. Someone saw her car near Barton Creek Square in Austin. Descriptions on some sites state that she was seen in the area that is now Barron Creek Square. However, Wikipedia states that Barton Creek Square existed at the time it had opened in 1980. It is a shopping mall, so it would make sense that she would have gone there on her own accord, since she was known to have been Christmas shopping that day. I do not know if her car was seen parked or moving, or if she was in it at the time. There was also a sighting of her car on Bee Cave Road. Again, no idea if the car was parked or moving. There weren't any shopping malls in that vicinity as far as I can tell. It's also unclear whether this sighting was before or after the Barton Creek Square sighting. Someone stated they had seen Sharon get out of her car with a man. There is no further detail about where, when, or which of them was getting out of the driver's side. It stated that police did find fingerprints in the car after it was found parked in an apartment complex on Research Boulevard, but that there was not enough physical evidence to implicate anyone in a crime. Does this mean they couldn't identify whose prints they were? Or does it mean there is a person of interest, but no evidence that a crime occurred? Was there any evidence that she had been Christmas shopping in her vehicle? Perhaps receipts from stores that would indicate whether she actually had been at Barton Creek Square? Any shopping bags? Was Sharon thought to have known anyone who lived in the apartment complex where her car was found? How long after her disappearance was it found? Sharon was an employee of the IRS in Austin at the time of her disappearance and aspired to go to medical school. She never picked up her paycheck and was never seen or heard from again. I wish there was a clearer timeline to follow. The Beacade Road area is somewhat remote and probably was more so in the 1980s. The other areas where she was known to be are, at least now, populated business areas and busy streets. I hope Sharon can be found soon. Number 4. Pinkie Mae Davis Heron. Pinkie Mae Davis Heron went missing from Del Valle, Texas in either 1976 or 1979, depending on which source you are looking at. Del Valle is a small suburb of Austin, although according to Wikipedia, Austin annexed some parts of Del Valle in 1990, so Del Valle used to be bigger. I am not sure if the part of Del Valle she went missing from is now considered Austin or not. Searches for Tex Golden Nugget, now closed, show the location as both Del Valle and Austin, depending on the source. According to most sites, she went missing in 1979, and I have seen varying dates from January to July to September. The Texas Dodge site, however, says she went missing in September 1976. Knowing the correct year would be very helpful in her case, and I will get to the reason shortly. Pinkie Mae was only 14 when she married in 1970. She had 2 children and was divorced from her husband in 1975. The day she went missing, she was seen driving to the Tex Golden Nugget, a motel and bar lounge in Del Valle where she was employed. A family friend saw her and said that Pinkie honked the horn and waved. She has never been seen again. I have been unable to find any information relating to the car she was driving, whether it was ever found or if it went missing with her. That would also be helpful to know. Normally when someone goes missing along with their vehicle, it points to a possibility that the person left voluntarily or that the person and/or car ultimately ended up in a body of water, either due to an accident or foul play. There are several ponds just outside the current border of Del Valle, as well as the Colorado River. It's worth noting that Pinkie was a skilled mechanic and enjoyed working on motorcycles and cars. Therefore, I would assume she spent time with others who had the same skills and interests, so it isn't too far-fetched, if she was harmed by someone she knew, that the person would have been capable of dismantling the car. Now for the unfortunate confusion about the year she went missing. 1979 would suggest an isolated incident. 1976, however, was the year that there was a string of young women who disappeared from the Austin area. All were around Pinkie's age, at least 2 of them, other than Pinkie, who is biracial, black and Hispanic, were black. There was Jennifer Joyce Barden, age 21. She disappeared in May 1976 from the area of 11th and Waller in Austin. She was with a friend, and they'd planned to see a movie. She stopped in a bar to get some money from friends there, and ended up staying there. She was seen getting into a brown van with California plates, with 2 men. She was never seen again. Jennifer was apparently distraught at the time, over the loss of a friend who was killed in February. I looked through death certificates. I found only one person in their 20s to 30s who was killed in February 1976. His name was Stephen Lulensky. He was a nurse at the Brackenridge Hospital emergency room and was killed inside the ER by a patron who was apparently mentally ill. Articles indicate that the person who killed Stephen had killed before. He had killed his own uncle in 1971, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity. I am not sure if Stephen Lulensky is the friend Jennifer was upset about. He is the only one I found in the Travis County death records, but it's very possible that Jennifer's friend died in a different county. Deborah K. Stewart, 19, also went missing in May 1976 from Austin. She was driving from Sears in South Austin, her place of employment, to a doctor's appointment at the University of Texas. She never arrived at her appointment and was never seen again. Deborah was ill at the time, suffering from a kidney ailment, although her illness would not have been apparent to people she encountered. Deborah's car was found shortly after, in East Austin. It has been suggested that Deborah's disappearance could be related to Jennifer Barton's, partly because of the timing, and also because both apparently knew people who hung out on 11th Street, although it is unknown whether the two knew each other. Another girl, Brenda Moore, disappeared in March 1976 at age 21. I do not know her race and have been unable to find a photograph of her. She was on her way to work at the Crestview Nursing Home in Austin, where she was a nurse's aide. Her car was found in East Austin, also 2 blocks away from where Deborah's had been found. She also reportedly suffered from depression. The fact that Jennifer and Deborah went missing within the same month, were both young black women who frequented the same area, does suggest that the two cases could be linked. The fact that Brenda's car was found 2 blocks from where Deborah's car was found suggests that these two could be linked. The fact that Brenda and Deborah were both last seen driving, as was Pinkie, suggests they could be linked also. As far as I know, no suspects have been named in any of the disappearances, and being that I do not know who Jennifer's friend was that was killed in February 1976, I have no idea if there was a suspect in that case. That was what I was trying to find out, to see if I could find any clues that could somehow connect to Pinkie. Oddly, while Travis County has 3 pages of male unidentified remains listed on names and 1 set of remains that they are unsure of the gender, they do not have a single female. I wonder if they just aren't great about getting them entered, or if they really don't have any. While Pinkie had been involved in a divorce in 1975, I found nothing to indicate that the marriage was abusive or that she was having problems with him at the time of her disappearance. However, it could be a possibility. When one goes missing while driving, it's safe to speculate that she stopped the car for some reason, possibly to pick up a stranger hitchhiker, possibly a carjacking, but much more likely she stopped for someone she knew. I also have no further information about the place where she worked, if she was having problems with anyone there, but there is always the possibility that she did arrive there and something happened. You'd think someone would remember seeing her though, if that were the case. There is a somewhat confusing entry for Pinkie on MyHeritage. I'm not too familiar with the site. It appears to be a genealogy site that pulls data from other genealogy sites and pieces it together so that a person's life events are all on one page. Some of the information on Pinkie is correct: the birth year, mother's name, and the marriage/divorce involving Mr. Heron. Those match up to the actual records I found. A couple things I am unsure of. MyHeritage lists a father, while Pinkie's birth record only mentions our mother. MyHeritage states that she was married a second time to an individual other than Mr. Heron. I can find no record of that marriage anywhere, but strangely, I did come across that last name while researching. It is the last name of the person who owned the Tex Golden Nugget. And lastly, MyHeritage shows a death date year of 1989 for Pinkie. I could find no record of this in the SSDI or the Texas Death Index. It could be that she was declared deceased after having been missing for so long, but typically it would be listed in the indexes. So I am curious where this additional information came from. There was a Pinkie Mae Davis who died in 1989, but she was born in 1914, I think, so clearly not this Pinkie. I hope Pinkie is found soon. She seems to have a lot of family and friends who miss her terribly. Number 5. Laurie Jane Reeves Richardson. Laurie Jane Evelyn Reeves Richardson was last known to be alive in February 1995. However, she has not been heard from by family members since 1992 to 1993. Laurie Jane Evelyn was born in Ohio 1959 and married Gregory Reeves in 1977. She gave birth to 4 children before separating from her husband. During the years that followed, Laurie was known to be in South Carolina, specifically in the areas of Goose Creek, Charleston, and Columbia. She was known to stay with a friend named Gary at times, while in the Columbia area. That is where she was believed to have been staying when her daughter last heard from her in 1992 to 1993. Laurie's movements between 1993 to 1994 are somewhat of a mystery, but they involve a marriage between her and Nathaniel Richardson in February 1994. Nathaniel Richardson had a criminal record that involved domestic violence and sexual misconduct. This marriage is the last confirmed action of Laurie's. There was a lawsuit filed against Laurie by Richland County Hospital in November 1994, but it is not known whether Laurie was ever aware of this fact or whether she was in fact hospitalized or when. The case was disposed, and a default final judgment entered in March 1995. The address listed on the judgment was 1712 Hampton Street, Columbia, South Carolina 29201. Laurie has never been heard from again, and her family is desperately searching for her. According to a family member, Nathaniel Richardson, her most recent husband, told authorities that he did not know if he and Laurie were still legally married. Please help bring her home. If you know anything about Laurie's disappearance, please contact Laurie's family through their Facebook page. Number 6. Nancy Kirkpatrick. Nancy Lynn Kirkpatrick, age 16, went missing from Columbia Falls, Montana on April 21, 1976. There is very little information available about her case. In fact, nothing even states where in Columbia Falls she was last seen, or by whom. Looks like this is another one to add to my list of record requests. What is known is that she was a good student and into the hippie thing, and that she had a boyfriend whom she may have recently broken up with around the time of her disappearance. Her family does not believe she left on her own. I wish we knew a bit more about what happened. Did she leave for school one morning and just never come back? Did she tend to hitchhike? Did her boyfriend cooperate with authorities? Did the authorities even search for her, or did they tell her family not to worry, she'd show up in a couple days, as has been the case so many times? Come home soon, Nancy. Number 7. Karen Camsh. Karen Beth Couch, age 14, disappeared from Pasadena, Maryland in the winter of 1976. Karen had been a straight-A student in her younger years and had even skipped 6th grade. It was shortly after the skipping of 6th grade that she fell in with a rough crowd and started getting into trouble. There is also some indication that Karen was being abused by a family member during this time. As a result of the problems Karen was facing, she moved in with her grandmother, Olga Camsh, on Wishing Rock Road in Pasadena. Olga Camsh became aware that Karen was missing when she received a call from Karen's school stating that she had not arrived at school that day. Olga checked the house, and Karen was not there. She had left all of her personal belongings, including her winter coat, in her bedroom. She was initially believed to have run away. Although Karen's father and grandmother had assured Karen's brother Tate that they had filed a missing persons report, no such record could be found when a now adult Tate inquired in May 2007. A neighbor of Olga's does, however, recalls seeing police at the home when Karen was discovered missing. In 2007, following Tate's inquiry, police filed a new report and began an investigation. They interviewed several family members, some cooperative and others not so much. This was when police were led to believe that Karen had been abused and possibly killed by her abuser. They considered the abuser a person of interest, although they did not specify who this person is. Though scattered clues in various articles narrows it down considerably, someone she would have left home to get away from, someone who would have access to her paternal grandmother's home. A massive 12-hour search was performed on Olga Camsh's property in 2007. Olga died in 1999, and the home is occupied by other family members. There were rumors at the time that a body had been found, though police never confirmed this. Law enforcement did, however, state that items of interest were found in an abandoned well on the property. They did not elaborate on what was found, other than to say they were items one wouldn't expect to find in a well. They said they would be testing these items for any evidence. Following that flurry of activity, there has been nothing reported until May 2014, when a general plea was issued for anyone who might know anything to come forward. These 2014 reports made no mention of the 2007 search, the allegations of abuse, or the 2007 speculation by law enforcement that a family member of Karen's has been living with a secret for a very long time. The 2014 reports only state that her disappearance is suspicious in nature. Neither of Karen's parents, who are no longer married, have been willing to speak with reporters. Karen's brother Tate had kept a picture of Karen by his bedside, believing at the time that she'd run away, in the hopes that she would eventually contact him. I can't imagine what it must be like for Karen's brother, who learned that Karen's missing persons report didn't exist, therefore her case wasn't investigated, and then to learn that she most likely did not run away. I truly hope he will get the answers he needs. Number 8. Thora Chamberlain. Thora was last seen outside Campbell High School in Campbell, California on November 2, 1945. She had just finished her classes and planned to attend a football game after school. Her classmates saw her speaking for several minutes to a man in a vehicle on Winchester Boulevard. One of the witnesses said the man was dressed like an ex-serviceman and wanted someone to babysit his sister's children for the afternoon. Thora got into the vehicle with him. She has never been heard from again. Thomas Henry McGonigal later claimed responsibility for Thora's murder, although his various statements about it differed widely in many details. At various times he claimed he stabbed her, that he shot her, that he strangled her, that she fell out of his car, that her death was accidental, and that he didn't kill her at all. Photos of McGonigal are posted below this case summary. He had an arrest record dating back to his teens for crimes including assault with intent to commit rape. He immediately became a suspect in Thora's disappearance and fled the area, going to his father's home in Illinois. On December 6, he returned to California, taking a bus to San Francisco. He attempted suicide on the bus by taking an overdose of sleeping pills, but recovered after treatment at the hospital. After his discharge from the hospital, McGonigal was arrested by FBI agents. Several of Thora's classmates identified him as the man she was speaking to on the afternoon she disappeared. He was not an ex-serviceman, but admitted having stolen a footlocker from a serviceman which contained the Navy-issue clothes and military medals he was wearing on the day of Thora's disappearance. The footlocker was later found in the garage of McGonigal's home in San Mateo, California. In one of his statements, McGonigal said he'd shot Thora accidentally while she was in his vehicle, and she bled on the car's padding and upholstery, which he ripped out and buried. FBI agents later recovered it from its burial site in a drainage ditch near McGonigal's workplace. It was stained with human blood. There was also a bullet hole in the door of McGonigal's car, which was consistent with his statement. He said he'd removed the bullet from the door and buried it under a certain tree in his yard. The FBI found it there and determined it had in fact been fired from McGonigal's .32 caliber Colt revolver. McGonigal gave several different accounts as to how he had disposed of Thora's body. At one point he said he'd thrown Thora's body off a steep 350-foot cliff known as the Devil's Slide, which overlooks Half Moon Bay on the San Mateo County coast. When police searched the area, they found Thora's 2 pairs of red and blue socks wedged in 2 different crevices partway down the cliff face. Her parents identified them. McGonigal had been working at a construction site at the time of his disappearance, and he got permission from his boss to fill in a nearby ditch with concrete blocks and dirt. When FBI agents dug up the ditch, they found Thora's shoes, school books and papers, binder and cowbell. McGonigal told investigators he'd buried her clothes in his backyard, but an excavation of the yard turned up nothing. No further trace of Thora was located. McGonigal was charged with Thora's murder in spite of the fact that her body had never been found. Prosecutors theorized he killed her after she resisted his sexual advances, and her body was carried out to sea after he tossed it off the Devil's Slide. The jury deliberated only 38 minutes before convicting him. He also confessed to the murder of a San Francisco, California woman, but authorities decided not to charge him because he was already under sentence of death. At one point he claimed he had killed 11 people, but this could not be verified. In his last statement prior to his execution in the gas chamber in 1948, McGonigal claimed he was completely innocent of any involvement in Thora's disappearance. Thora's body has never been found. Foul play is suspected in her case due to the circumstances involved.